Ladies and gentlemen, give me a second. We are a little bit of a rush this evening to get this all straightened out to be able to do today, and I will explain a few probably points of confusion in just a minute, but just give a little bit of time for people to get in. Go ahead and wait until about 30 seconds, and I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of Vanderbilt in the entire viewing world, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Terrier Talk. This fine Labor Day holiday is met with a few differences, of course, for me this week. This Sunday, over the Labor Day weekend, I was not able to have a guest for this episode because over the course of the Labor Day weekend, I am in will still be in Baton Rouge visiting with my grandparents. That's why you see a different background here in a different room, of course. And you probably notice some board games back there. It's a different room. And that's where I am for this week. No guest this week, sadly, but still a lot to talk about. Very important information. Of course, this is the bridge sort of episode between the season previews for specifically volleyball and football. The cross-country and swimming seasons haven't really started yet, so there's not much to talk about. And going into the first official games of the season in the first game previews. So we're going to go right into it. So only jamborees this week, but still lots to talk about. Starting with volleyball. The volleyball team had their jamboree on Wednesday, if I recall correctly, at Terrebonne, if I recall correctly. I apologize. And they looked like the championship contender that everyone's expecting them to be. Two-time defending state champions, and they went undefeated along with their JV team. So it really isn't much of a surprise to see that team look like the best in the region, because I think they are the best in the region. I think they're better than Terrebonne. I think they're better than Ellender. I think they're better than Assumption. I think they're better than South Terrebonne, HL Bourgeois. All these different teams that they, if I recall correctly, played, I apologize, that these were one-set games, but they looked like the best team at the Jamboree. I think that's going to continue throughout the season. I think they're going to be elite this season. There's nothing throughout this preseason, going into these jamborees, going into the beginning of the season, that makes me think they're going to be anything other than a top-level championship contender going into this season. That I'll talk about volleyball a little bit more going into their first official games, but that's really what happened over the course of this week for volleyball. Moving on to football, we had the Jamboree against St. James on Friday. It was the main event of the two-day Jamboree series that St. James held. We played the host team in St. James, and it was a game that we aren't going to want to remember very fondly for a very long time in the future. It was very ugly in the first half, especially. It didn't go our way, and the numbers back that up in a lot of ways. So I'm going to start with the offense, because the offense, numerically speaking, statistically speaking, the future, I don't want to say the future, but the game didn't look as bright on the offensive side of the football as it did on the defense. So let's start with that. On the offensive side, for the second week in a row, held to fewer than 100 yards of total offense. Against Terrebonne, obviously, it wasn't a full game, but it was around the same number of snaps as you would expect for a full game, like 53 or so. And we were held to 99 yards of total offense. This week, it was only 30 minutes of live play, as opposed to a normal 48-minute game. But still, we were held to 95 yards of total offense. That is not good, and that is not going to sustain a good team going into the future. Even if you want to double that number, because we played just over a half of football, 200 yards of total offense is not really acceptable more than anything else. It's not good. Breaking down further, looking at those numbers, Bryden Roundtree had 40 yards of rushing on 10 carries. That's not actually, but it's pretty good. 4 yards a carry is acceptable for a running back. But if you look outside of that, for those numbers, Gavin Daigle, the starting quarterback throughout the game, played all except for the last drive. was 5 for 15 passing with 25 passing yards. Not numbers you're going to want to see for your passing game. And probably the one number that is the most concerning going into the future, because A, this is a percentage, meaning that it doesn't get affected by the number of plays we played. And B, it's just a very concerning number. We were 0 for 10 on third down conversions during this game. That number is scary. That number is concerning. Going towards the beginning of the season, of course, with E. White. That's a number that needs to get rectified quickly going into the beginning of the season. So there's a saying I've heard when it comes to offensive play and offensive efficiency, and what two aspects of offensive efficiency kind of dictate how good an offense can be, and that's third down conversions, and that is red zone efficiency. And if you look at those two metrics specifically, this is a very concerning game for the offense. I had just told you the third down conversion, and the offense only had one red zone drive during the game. I'll talk about that a little bit more during the defense, but just quickly describing it, we got the ball on the 8. What's our report on the 8th grade football team? I'll go ahead and stop. Thank you, James. First of all, thank you for commenting. But second of all, from what I've heard about the 8th grade football team, I do need to look more into junior high in the future, but I heard they had a very good game against Houma Junior High last week. They lost, I think, by a touchdown, giving up a fumble or dropping a touchdown late into the game with a chance to tie up the game. That is rather unfortunate for them. Obviously, now competing with Houma Junior High is good, especially for their future, Houma Junior High being one of those top teams in the district. But obviously hope to get a win. I think the team's going to have a bright future going into the rest of the season. Some really good players on that team. And of course, I hope them the best of luck going into their future games this season. Back to the football team. We get the ball on the 8-yard line. Turnover, get the ball on the 8-yard line. Get 3 yards on first and goal. Get second and goal on the 5, and you have to be able to punch it in from there. You just have to be able to do it. And we don't. We then convert to an Austin Lede field goal, the freshman kicker. He converts, kicks the field goal, and those were our only points of the game. You're welcome, James. That's concerning. Now, obviously, 100% red zone efficiency, scoring on every drive, but everyone wants to look at that touchdown ratio because that's really what matters. When you get that close to the end zone, you want to be able to punch it in, and we failed to do that. Not yesterday, Friday. That's a problem. That's something that has to be rectified and soon. The defense, the numbers on the surface look very worrisome as well, but I think the defense, I'm not nearly as concerned for the defense as the offense. Some of those numbers, we gave up over 300 yards of total offense, 328 if I recall correctly, 329, excuse me. Which, if you extrapolate that out to a 48-minute game, you're looking at over 500 yards of total offense, which is concerning. However, that number is very misleading, especially if you want to extrapolate that out. We gave up 4 big plays, 4 touchdown plays in the first half, basically a quarter, and then gave up very little yardage after that in the game. I think we gave up around 3/4 of our yardage in the first half, which means we probably weren't going to be giving up many more points or many more yards, even if that game were extended out to 48 minutes. Maybe another touchdown, but nothing too much. We gave up 26 points in the game. And we gave up 329 yards of total offense. However, 180 of those total yards, nearly 2/3 of them, were scored on the 4 touchdown plays. 3 of those plays being big plays, either a 40-yard run or a 40-yard pass, or I think it was even a 70-yard pass early on in the game to put the score, I think, 12-0 at the time. And the thing is, you look at those numbers and it doesn't look great. However, this isn't that different from the numbers that the team from last season put up, and that team was elite. That was an elite defense from last season. The only difference being that St. James is an elite opponent, and we saw when our defense played elite opponents, we gave up lots of big plays. that's how we gave up most of our yards, those big chunk yards, and that's how we gave up a lot of points against Edie Whites. I didn't see a lot of the De La Salle film, but if I had to guess, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how that worked as well. And that's what happened here. We gave up big plays. It's been a weakness of the defense before, and they were a very talented offense, and they were able to score points. I'm not that worried about that. You all know why I'm not that worried about that? Because when we didn't give up the big plays throughout the game, we were able to stop them. When we kept contained, when we were able to slow them down, they were stopped. They were 1 for 5 on third down. I'll get to that later. That is the main event of the episode, James. Don't worry, that will be coming up soon. Well, not soon. It'll be at the end of the episode, but don't worry, it'll be here. But when we did stop the big play, they were 1 for 5 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. We stopped them 6 different times on 7 occasions of having a chance to do so. That's really good. That's a number that has a lot of upside going into the season and shows that this defense might be great again going into the season, even with the turnover that they had. We won the turnover battle. I mentioned the fumble recovery at the on the 8-yard line, recovered by Chris Bonvline. Braden Heck also had an interception on our own 16 earlier on in the game. So we won the turnover battle actually 2-0. Hello, the white man. Thank you for greetings, and thank you for interacting on the show. So we won the turnover battle 2-0, which is a very weird number when you look at it. We got outgained. We lost by 23 points. I need to set up a donation system because it's not the first time a question has been asked in regards to sending money. At this point, no, but it's something that I want to look upon in the future to be able to do, and I'll try to set that up as quickly as I can. Also, thank you, Father Craig. I'm not sure exactly what Chubby Bunny is, but thank you, Father Greg, for commenting and stopping by. So we won the turnover battle 2-0. That's actually something that is very good for our offense. We know this defense will probably be very good. If our offense is able to hold on to the ball at the very least, that is a very good thing going into the future. A couple of other bright spots statistically going into the game. Sean Diebold led the team in tackles with 5.5. For those who heard me talk about the Terrebonne game, that might come as a slight surprise, with Hayden Klingman and Chandler Rhodes leading the team in tackles during that game. Hayden Klingman came in second, if I recall correctly, this game with 4 or 3.5 or something like that. But Chandler Rhodes was nowhere to be seen. Chandler Rhodes was out with a stinger, just resting, make sure he was good for the first game of the season. Injuries in general are something I wanted to bring up during this game because I think it probably did have an effect on the box score in general. Thank you. On the box score in general, Caleb Calhoun, our starting running back during the preseason, going into the season, out. He won't be back until about halfway through the season. Chandler Rhodes, after this game, he'll be back for Edie White. Mark Matthew, after this game, our one returning starter offensive lineman from last season. I'm not sure when he's going to be getting back. I think he'll be starting practice sometime next week. I'm not sure if he will be able to play for the Edie White game or not, but he should be back soon. Thad Corns, on concussion protocol, was out for this game. I think that had an effect. Those were 4 starters. Those are 4 big starters. And I think that had an effect on the game and on the box score. That being said, a lot of those players will be back. At least 2 of them, if not 3, will be back for the Edie White game. So this team should look even better than we did, even with the bright spots that we did have going into this game. One last bright spot I want to bring up is Gavin Daigle. So Gavin Daigle, he was the starting quarterback, of course. That wasn't the only position that he started in, however. He started at punter as well. And while Gavin's passing numbers didn't look amazing during this game, his punting numbers did look very, very good. He averaged 36.4 yards per punt, including putting 2 inside of the 20, including specifically a great 50-yard net punt, putting the team down in the 6, which I think led to the field goal eventually in the second half. If Gavin can keep that up, and we can play this field position battle throughout the game, and throughout the season in general, and hold on to the football. This is a team that's going to be able to get a lot of wins. If that's the way we can play this game, if that's the way we can do this team can get a lot of wins. In summary, the team looked outmatched by one of the best teams in the States, but there's really no harm in that. There were some points of concern, there were some bright spots, but I think this team overall is going to be okay going into going into the beginning of the season. So before we get into the previews, that was the reviews of the games from last week. Before we get into the previews, I do have an announcement to make. A couple of weeks ago, I released a video talking about the potential new series, Gridiron Gateway, talking about college football. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that series. We just didn't have enough time in the week, and trying to do a series on a weeknight was logistically very difficult to set up and do. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that series going into the beginning of this year. I might entertain the possibility of making videos from time to time talking about college football if people would be interested in that. But also, Mr. Yugoslavia, thank you for talking. Thank you for stopping by on the show. I'm not really looking for rhythm, but thank you, I guess. And Gridiron Gateway is not going to be able to move on, at least throughout this season. So now, sorry. Now going on to the season preview. So volleyball has 2 games this week, going into the beginning of the season to begin the season, officially begin the season. It's great. Both volleyball and football get official beginnings of the season this first week of September. The first game against Central Catholic, and it is no cupcake to begin the season. Central Catholic looks like a very good team. We opened the season with them last year. We beat them 3-1, if I recall correctly, 3-1. But this Eagles team is no tough customer. They went 36-9 last season, including going a whopping 23-2 on the road. That's what this game is going to be for them. We're hosting the Central Catholic Eagles, of course. They made it to the semifinals of their state tournament last season, looking very strong doing so. Now, as the Division 5 tournament, we were in the Division 3 tournament and won it. We look like the stronger team going into the season. However, they still looked very strong in the position they were in, winning 3 different state tournament games. That being said, I still think this is a matchup pretty drastically in our favor. Well, drastically is a strong word, but pretty well into our favor. And that's for one big reason. All these numbers I'm talking about are off of last season. I don't know who Central Catholic is returning starters-wise for their starters, but I would almost bet money that it is not as good as the starters that we are returning this season, going into the season. We have such a strong group of senior girls, a lot of them starting at the beginning of last season and starting, of course, as well this season, that I just don't think there's going to be a team with a stronger chemistry that we're going, or many teams with stronger chemistry that we're going to meet throughout the season. And I don't think Central Catholic is going to be one of those teams. So that is on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we are playing at Episcopal. Now, I'm not 100% sure what Episcopal team this is. There are a lot of Episcopal teams in Louisiana. I did the preview based on Episcopal of Acadiana, which seems like the most likely opponent. I apologize if I'm incorrect on this. So Episcopal had a respectable 2018, going 24-10. Similarly to Central Catholic, they also came very far in the Division 5 tournament, getting to the final 8, the third round, actually losing to Central Catholic in the round before Central Catholic lost. However, differently from different situation this time, same situation as same split record as Central Catholic. They're also much better on the road than they are at home. I guess luckily for us, theoretically speaking, we are on the road in this game. So they lost to Central Catholic in the quarterfinals. They look like a very solid team, but the situation is still the same. This team, there's no way this team returns the same number of great starters that we were able to return from our state championship winning team last season. I think we are pretty well favored going into this game. So that's volleyball this week. I would be kind of surprised if we dropped either of these games at the beginning of the season. Moving on finally to the Holy War, Vanderbilt versus Edie White. On paper, on the schedule, the biggest rivalry game going into the beginning of this season. You could make arguments for a few other games, and I'll talk about that throughout the season. But this is the season opener. This is the first game. This is the big game. This one counts, and this is our biggest rival. The Dirty Birds, the people 14.3 miles down the road, are coming to home in Louisiana to try to win a football game. That is what's happening Friday night. It is the biggest game of the week, and quite possibly the biggest game of the season in the regular season for both of these teams. It's always a big game. It's always really important. And I'm going to do something. I mentioned this a lot last season every time we played Edie White. I'm going to do something a little bit special this season in regards to the moniker of the Holy War. I'm going to treat it as basically a competition between the two teams, and I'm going to keep score. I'm going to keep count of every single competition. Vanderbilt and Edie White are in this season in any sport, and counts every single time Vanderbilt beats Edie White and every single time Edie White beats Vanderbilt. I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to keep count of it in every game review. I will update you on what the score is. And I don't know if I'm going to do anything special at the end of the season if we win, but definitely going to keep track of that. So that being said, let's actually get into this game formally. Now, Edie White is going to be very different from the two teams that we faced, both in our scrimmage and in our jamboree. Terrebonne and St. James are two of the most raw, talented teams in the entire state, with two of the most highly touted senior quarterbacks in the entire state. Edie White's not that. Edie White had a very highly touted quarterback last season, and Brandon Lejeune, of course. However, they do not have that this season. They're lacking that. They're not this crazy, uber-talented team. That being said, they seem to be a much more well-coached and much more well-disciplined team than the first two teams we faced. We were able to take advantage of those discipline issues a lot during both of those games, during the Terrebonne game and the St. James game. That's something we're not going to be able to do on offense or on defense during this game. Edie White's going to swarm to the ball on defense. They're going to be strong both on offense and defense just through their chemistry, through their coaching ability, through the coach's coaching ability, through their discipline. And that's something we're going to have to break. That's something we're going to have to be better than them at. It's not going to be a talent disadvantage this time. This time, we just have to stay together as a team in order to win this game. Schematically, I'm not that well aware of Edie White's situation. However, just looking at our jamboree and looking at our scrimmage, my guess is this game is going to end up being low scoring. It's going to be very claustrophobic. Every point is going to end up counting towards the end. Well, every point is going to be extremely important going towards the end of this game. Every single score is going to matter. And these two teams might be in for a grinder of a 48 minutes going into this game. My formal prediction going into the game, my formal score prediction, Vanderbilt 13, Edie White 10. I think Vanderbilt's going to win. I don't think it will be easy. I think Vanderbilt's going to go on to win the game. I think it'll be a claustrophobic game. Every single point's going to matter. But I think Vanderbilt's going to come out of this pile of humanity that is going to be this game on top. This is the Holy War. No matter how highly touted one team is over the other going into the season, this is always a close game. This is always a big game that there's one player, two plays, either on the offense, defense, special teams, whatever it ends up being, that has a huge effect on the game, that leads to catastrophic effects for the loser and glorious effects for the winner. And that's how this game's going to be, because that's how it is every single year. It's a big game for us. We have to go out there. This is the first game for, of course, Coach Leday, first formal game, official game for Coach Leday. And this is the culmination of months and months of practice. We have to go out there. We have to compete. We have to succeed. We have to win the game. That's going to be all for today. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. And thank you. Hope you come by next time. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you next time. Same time, same channel. Thank you, James.